In today's advanced world, we are constantly bombarded with the newest CGI and the highest resolution, but the truth is, digital, it's too honest. It shows you everything, and it makes you feel nothing. There was a time where film dominated our world, and film was never meant to be perfect. It was alive, halation bleeding into the highlights, colors that felt like a memory. Today I'm going to show you how to steal that feeling back inside DaVinci Resolve, not with gimmicks, but with a real repeatable pipeline. Stock, contrast, and color density. By the end of this video, your footage won't look graded. It'll look like it was shot on film. What's up guys, so welcome to another YouTube video. I've been gone for a little while, but I'm back, and today's video I'm going to be showing you actually how to use a very cool and exciting new tool, Dehancer. I've been hearing about it for a while, never got my hands on it, but now I recently just got Dehancer on my DaVinci Resolve, and honestly it's changed the game. I'm going to show you guys how to use it, what it can do for your footage, and trust me, if you do this, footage never going to look the same. Okay, so let's head right into the project. So guys, as we can see, I'm in the project file right now. Okay, I've got three clips in here. Okay, one slow motion, this is at sunset, this is midday, and this is also sunrise. So three different situations, just so we can see how does Dehancer hold up against these different times. Okay, first things first, we want to make sure that our project settings are set correctly. Project settings and export settings are going to be incredibly important to make sure that our footage is as clean as possible and that it fits across several devices. If we're editing on our MacBook and we upload to Instagram, we want to make sure things are consistent so they look the same. If you're unsure about all that stuff, and maybe you're even a beginner in color grading, I invite you to check out the Creators HQ down below. It's my course and I teach beginners step 1 to step 10 on everything you need to know. Cameras, color grading, whatever you name it. So if that sounds like your gravy, go ahead, check that out. But for now, I'm going to go into my project settings. And just make sure in color management, Rec 709A is selected because this is a MacBook. Okay, now let's get straight into it. I'm going to be using my power grade that you can also find down below. I'm literally just going to drag and drop, but I'm going to make everything a little bit raw so that we can understand exactly what's going on. Okay, just going to reset everything. Now, as we can see from the image and the data that's shown, we're obviously quite overexposed. But if we actually check the qualifier, which is what we should be doing, we should never be making decisions based on emotion alone. We always want to make decisions based on data. If I check the qualifier tool, we can see that actually my skin isn't really over that exposed. Okay, even the brightest part of the skin falls in a good range. Okay, between 6 and 9. So we don't want to lower the exposure too much. So in order to fix the exposure problem here, we want to effectively reduce the exposure of the sky and still keep the information on our skin. First things first, I'm going to reduce the overall image using HDR wheels. I'm just going to reduce the global. Again, now my skin's probably a little bit too dark, so increase the gamma, and then I'll just reduce a little bit of the highlights. Okay, like that's pretty good. And then as we can see, there's a massive gap down here. So we're just going to drop the lift and increase a little bit of the contrast. We don't want to put too much contrast in here. We're going to do that as we develop the look. This is all just making sure that our exposure is okay, right? Again, if all of this sounds a little bit, whoa, what did you do just there? Go check out the Creators HQ, okay? It's the place for you. Anyway, my white balance, I actually like the white balance here. I think it's okay, but we can see that we're a little bit off. So using the hue, which literally just turns the wheel around, I'm going to edge it close to the line. And that's good enough for me. Now I'm going to warm up the image slightly because I know that this is shot around sunset. So I kind of want those tones to shine through. So I'm going to warm up the image using my warm node. Okay. Now here we're going to start to build our look. I'm just going to turn on my film node and I'm going to go in and one by one just turn them on. Okay. The contrast node. If you're doing this yourself, you want to make sure that you're using the contrast node in the HDR wheels as opposed to color wheels. When you're working in the HDR wheels, it's going to affect primarily the luminance values. Whereas if you're working in the color wheels, it's going to do color as well and make your image too saturated. Okay, so just going to increase the contrast. And then obviously my S-curves, post-contrast node. It's a little bit too purple. That's just to correct a little bit of the colors. Now, usually I would reduce the highlights, but for this, I'm gonna actually not do that, just so you guys can see how powerful Dehancer is, okay? I will turn on my look node, and that's how I build my signature aesthetic that you can see across my social media. And here's where we start to build the magic. I'm gonna turn Dehancer on, okay? Now, obviously, this has been preset to something that I do often, and then I adjust. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable everything and run through from start to finish what you need to do. When you first open up Dehancer, it can seem quite intimidating because you're like, what does all of this mean? But I'm going to show you. So, first of all, we need to make sure that the correct source is selected. Now, in my power grade that you can find down below, I always do the color space transform at the start and at the end. What I work in is DaVinci White Gamut. So let me show you what that means. So in this node, we can see that, I don't know why it's not showing, but we can see that it's reading Panasonic Vlog and spitting out DaVinci Intermediate. Okay, and we go to Dehancer, we want to make sure that we have Intermediate clicked. Okay, now all we need to do here is just adjust for the sky. See, just the exposure compensation is literally what we were talking about. It's going to compensate for the exposure to make sure everything's in line perfectly. And you know what? I like that. Just a little bit too bright because we'll come back later. I'll keep the temperature pretty high and the tint pretty normal. Now, in terms of the film stock, what are you going to pick is going to be trial and error. Just trying a few different ones, see which ones you like. I've come across a few that I like. So the first one that I quite like is Fujicolor Print Industrial. I also like Superior, okay? And then obviously the famous Kodaks, you know, you got Kodak Portra, and then obviously the Kodak Vision 3s. These are probably the most popular, okay? But for me, in my look, I really do like, I think, what was it? Superior or Industrial? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go with Superior. So like the Superior, okay? Obviously, we can adjust the look to make sure that we're doing it properly. Now, in the film developer, I'm going to enable that. And this is where we're going to do a lot of the creative control between the contrast of the colors and the shadows. So I'm going to reduce the contrast boost a little bit because we know that we are already slightly underexposed. And then you can gamma correct. Okay. I will up the color boost quite a bit and then desaturate down the line. That's how I've figured out my way of getting that film analog look. Once we've done the film developer, we're going to move on to film compression and enable that. And this impact node is going to be really useful for when we're dealing with situations such as this, where we have a bright source of light behind us or inconsistent values in exposure across the entire image, right? You can, there we go. Now guys, a lot of this is going to be touch and feel, right? There's a lot of things in here that I don't personally know exactly what they do, but if you just fine tune one by one and you go down the list, you're going to end up with a really sick image, okay? So again here, like I've just selected my white point and I've seen like what I like, okay? This is where we don't have to make decisions based on data entirely. We can go over a little bit of touch and feel and be super creative. That's why I love Dehancer, because it allows you to really have full creative control over your film look. Like I really, in this image, I really want the sky to shine through, okay? And I might even go back and up the contrast boost a little bit. Now, once I've done the film compression stuff, I'm gonna go onto here and expand, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm sitting in the waveform, because look what's gonna happen. Usually, when you first open Dehancer, it's going to be selected on normal. Make sure that you're only working in Luma, okay? Enable that, and look what it's going to do to our exposure values. And then look at the image as well. When I turn it off, it's a bit too harsh. When I turn it on, it's a bit softer. We can adjust our image to our liking, okay? That's already a million times better. Now again here, without print, we can do a few things. I think naturally it's going to be sitting at linear, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it at Fujifilm print. I'm going to enable it, and I'm also going to enable the analog range limiter. What the analog range limiter is going to do in this situation is going to mimic the physical limitations of film, right? Obviously, when digital and like the cameras that we're using, we can really push and gather so much information, and we can push it when we color grade and post. But film has actual physical limitations. And so what I like about this is that I can just tick the analog range limiter, and it's going to input those physical limitations onto my digital image, effectively making it more analog. So let's just look at the difference between Kodak and Fujifilm. In this instance, I actually like the Kodak print film look, okay? I'm gonna, again, adjust the whites. I'm gonna up the exposure, up the tonal contrast, make sure my color density is actually pretty strong, and then I'm gonna decrease the saturation, okay? So let's look at what we've done so far with Dehancer. If we turn that off, remember we were like super overexposed, right? That looks super gray. Like that's magic, basically. It's like magic, okay? In terms of the film grain and the halation, I'm not gonna turn those on. I like to do those myself with DaVinci's input materials down the line once I finished color grading. I will turn on bloom and gate weave. If you're wondering what gate weave is, gate weave just represents that motion when film is running through the camera, how sometimes the image is stretched slightly. That's what gate weave does. So I like to turn it on just because. And then that's literally all I do. You could put some vignetting if you want, okay? Because this image is already dark on its own, I'm not gonna put too much. Okay, and that's all you're gonna do for Dehancer. As I can see now, the image is still a little bit dark, so I'm gonna go back to the start and raise my exposure, and that looks crazy. Okay, perfect. Now that's done, we've literally built out our film look within one singular node with the Dehancer plugin. Now I'm gonna move on and do a little bit of some tweaks, okay? So I'm gonna go over here, and in my post exposure, I am gonna increase the shadows slightly and turn on my grain and halation. Again, these are preset in my power grade that you can find down below. I'm gonna sharpen the image a little bit just so that it looks good for YouTube. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna throw in my favorite LUT, my own Megan Fox LUT. Okay, just slightly. And this again is my kind of aesthetic that you can find online, just to make the image a bit sharper, more grittier. So all the LUTs that I've created, which you can also find down below, there's gonna be so many things down below, but the LUTs that I've created, I've been inspired by specific characters, movies. So for example, you got Hustle and Flow from the Hustle and Flow movie. You've got Megan Fox from the grittiness of Transformers. And so that's what I've done here with this node. As we can see here, when I've thrown on my LUT, it's just made the image a little bit grittier, a little bit more 2005. So now that you guys have seen the color grade, let's actually see what it does when we apply it. Now let's move on to another clip in a different situation, just so you can see how easy it is to literally just copy, paste, drop it, adjust a couple nodes, and we're good to go. Remember, we want it to be easy. So again, I've got my power grade with Dehancer set up, and already I'm happy with that. Nothing needs to be adjusted. If we wanted to adjust, we could maybe drop the light on my chest a little bit and then increase the gamma a little bit. But I'm already super happy with this image. I think this looks incredible. But let's move on to maybe something else that's not as easy. We're gonna go over here, drag and drop. And already it's pretty easy, okay? Drag and drop. Again, this is my personal power grade with a Dehancer tool attached. If you want Dehancer, go down below and use my promo code to get a discount off your order. If you want power grade, you can also find that down below. Now over here, I don't really see again anything I would want to change. Maybe I would just increase the shadows slightly. And then maybe a little bit more contrast. I think that's already pretty dope. As you can see, using my power grade and Dehancer, it's going to be super simple for you to go ahead and color grade your footage and make it look crazy in my opinion. So now let's go back, see once again what all these images look like with the transformations in. Absolutely incredible in my opinion. Guys, you can't tell me if you don't upload this on your YouTube channel, on your vlogs, they're gonna look incredible. Look at that. So guys, that's all I have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial. Again, this is something that I've been thinking about for a while. I've been seeing Dehancer pop up, and take from me, I highly recommend you go ahead and grab that tool if you want your footage to look absolutely cinematic, look incredible. If you are a beginner or you want to learn more about color grading, editing, and creating dope YouTube videos, go ahead, check out the Creators HQ. Again, power grades, lots available down below. With that being said, everyone, thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.